Welcome to the Restoration Group podcast, where we're sometimes silly, often silly, but we are always serious about investing in Oklahoma City leaders who desire to integrate their work into their Christian faith. I'm your host, Clay Steves. Today is an internal episode continuing a 4-part series. I am joined by both of my co-hosts, Aaron Scott, and this one today will be facilitated by our co-host, Michael Mead.
I thought I was facilitating this one.
Oh, you can. With your command and tendency to take over meetings, I'd be happy to let you.
That was so good.
Great. Way to integrate so many other personality profiles. Yeah. Well played.
I'm stepping out of the way.
And I will. So,
Michael, go ahead.
First question. Clay, how do you feel about Michael facilitating this episode?
Wonderful. Michael, go.
Wow, that was a lot.
Got him.
We are diving into the Enneagram today.
Yes.
And it's going to be
witchcraft?
Beautiful. Some people think that it is.
I believe that.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll just rip that out really quick because
I didn't plan to.
I've posted stuff on LinkedIn. We do events, and I have gotten people responded saying like, I opt out for religious reasons when this is brought to work because I think it is demonic, satanic, whatever.
Yeah.
We clearly do not believe that that is true. I'm not going to get into the conspiracy on it, but we believe this is a tool that can be used by all people, can be used by Christians to better understand how God created us. So
I have so many comments that I'm holding.
That a girl. Good job.
Oof,
we'll do like a bonus after hours episode and just be like, okay, Aaron, go.
Because I have some follow-up questions to the people who think it's demonic.
We could do like a live stream.
That would be a terrible idea.
Well, touche. Michael.
So talking about the Enneagram today.
Yes, we are.
We do workshops and teach teams how to integrate this into the work. Yep. And one of the things when we teach our like entry level workshop that we over communicate is we are intentionally keeping it at an entry level. Mm-hmm. And that is what we're going to do in this podcast episode. So for those of you listening that are familiar with the tool, have read or researched some, just be aware that we're doing that on purpose for the person that has never really heard much about the Enneagram before. So we're not going to go on the super deep dive today. We're more introducing it, talking about how we use it at work, different things like that. So in the series, we're talking about Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, and Strength Finders.
Yep.
What's really interesting is that Myers-Briggs and Strength Finders have very clear origin stories, when they started, what year, etc. The Enneagram is an ancient tool that no one really knows when it started, but it goes back 1,000 or 2,000 years. So it's very old. There's a bunch of things you can learn on that, but it's interesting to me that it's been around so long and doesn't really have like a founder, or like we talked about with Myers-Briggs, started in 1920. You can't find that for those of you.
By women.
That's right. Gotcha.
Shout out.
Shout out.
But I have, just to kind of give like a cursory introduction to the Enneagram, I'm actually just going to read this excerpt, and I got this from Ian Morgan Cron, who is a renowned Enneagram teacher. Yeah. He has a lot of content about how to integrate Enneagram into a workplace, so we learn a lot from him. And you know, this is his explanation of the Enneagram. It's an ancient personality typing system that teaches there are 9 basic personality types in the world. While we each carry traits of all 9 personality types, and I think that's important to be aware of, there is one type that we naturally gravitate toward. And the teaching in the Enneagram is that we adopt this type in childhood, actually, and that is our dominant type through life. And one of the ways we use it is to cope and navigate with the world and the world of relationships. And we refer to that as our dominant type. So unlike other personality assessments, even some of the other ones that we're discussing in the series, the Enneagram really takes into account the fluid nature of the personality, which is constantly adapting and changing as circumstances change. And sometimes we function out of a healthy place, and oftentimes, even within days, we toggle to an unhealthy place. Therefore, the Enneagram can help people identify when they're healthy and performing at their best, or it could also give indicators for when they're unhealthy and potentially engaging in self-defeating behaviors. So as you learn the tool and understand what your preferences and tendencies are behaviorally, if you are exhibiting behaviors that are not in line with that, it could be almost like a check engine light of like, am I stressed? Am I carrying a burden I don't need to carry? Do I have unresolved conflict with someone? Or am I unhealthy in any way? It can really indicate that that might be true. We'll link a image of this, what I'm about to describe. There's a diagram that shows the 9 types in a circle, and it has arrows connecting the different numbers. So when you look at that diagram, you see that each number has a dynamic relationship with 4 other numbers. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. One of the most common ones, and we'll discuss, are the wings. So your number interacts with the number immediately to the left and right, thinking about it like a clock, starting at 1, ending at 9. And so you engage with that. And then you also engage with numbers in health and in stress. And the idea here is that your dominant type doesn't change, but that your behavior is influenced by those other numbers, and that you'll be pulling from multiple numbers in your journey on life. And the big thing we believe here is that when you lean into your dominant type and learn how it interacts with the other numbers, you will be more aware. And this will be a resource to help you operate in health. And in the workplace, a resource to help you engage with your team and potentially as a leader, learn how to love your team when you might observe some indicators of them in health or not. So that's a bit of a mouthful on the introduction of the Enneagram, just to get us on a common footing. So I'll go to you guys. How's the Enneagram benefited you in your personal development journey?
Aaron.
I think it has helped put some words to feelings. And if we look back on our previous episode on Myers-Briggs, so I test as a T, which is a thinker. It doesn't mean that we don't have feelings, which is a common misconception there. But I do think that typically people who test in Myers-Briggs as thinkers have a harder time maybe articulating their feelings. Also on the Enneagram, I'm an 8, which just kind of doubles down on a hard time articulating feelings. So in my own Enneagram profile, there's the dynamic of like, how do I put words to what I'm feeling? And I think the popularity of Enneagram honestly has kind of helped bring that to the forefront. And I think that's how it has been helpful for me in the workplace. It kind of rising to the surface as a very popular, even on social media. If you're on social media at all, you know, there's like a meme for everything. There's, and there are some more serious ones. There are ones focused on relationship. Like when I say ones, I mean like social media accounts, like focused on relationships, focused on, workplace things, focused on whatever. Then you got like all the like, which Disney princess are you, Enneagram type and stuff, which I find less helpful. But I will say the rise in popularity, I think, has helped me not only learn more about it and put more words to some feelings that I might have a difficult time articulating, but also just help me feel less alone in that. Like, oh, okay, so there's like a whole group of us who typically, again, not putting anyone in a box,
Sure.
It's not always,
Sure.
but who typically might think or feel or react this way. Like, okay, great. So I'm not a terrible person, or if at least I am, I've got a lot of other terrible people that are on this journey with me. So, so that, and even, I think even being able to laugh at ourselves is helpful. And so even though like I give those like memes kind of a hard time and you took like a long, deep breath there, I think there is even some intrinsic value there that like, to be able to not just beat yourself up about like how terrible the poor qualities of your Enneagram are, but to be able to kind of laugh and be like, yeah, man, that is not awesome, but it's sometimes accurate, you know? And even in a more serious vein, like find paths of growth. So I think Enneagram has laid out really well some paths to health. And I think the way that some of the readings kind of help guide you through that, that's a lot of value that I've found in the tool is, and I'm going to go back one more time to the popularity, specifically in the workplace, because it's so popular, there's a lot of common verbiage. A lot of our team, not everyone, but a lot of our team is at least surface level familiar, which can be dangerous, but it can also have the pro that we can kind of pick up and have a conversation pretty quickly about like Enneagram or how that plays out in the workplace without a ton of effort, just because everyone has, or a lot of people have a surface level working knowledge of it.
Yeah. That's good.
That was a lot.
I don't know if my deep breath was off your thing, but maybe it was.
It was directly related to her meme comment. We have that on video to prove.
Yeah, we have the video to prove it.
Darn video. So I said it last episode and I'm going to say it again here. And it leads to the story that I want to share about when it's benefited my self-development journey. One, remember that these tools, right? We talked about Myers-Briggs last week. We're talking about Enneagram this week, StrengthsFinder next week. They actually can be divisive.
For sure.
They can be divisive. And so, especially in a relationship. And so when the Enneagram came to our family, Kirsten was the one exposed to it. Shout out to Kinder Golden, KG. She had like a girls weekend summit, invited Kirsten to go. And Kirsten went on a journey and really began to believe in the tool. And I did not. And I was a little more hesitant and I didn't have the exposure. And it really, like, I experienced being on the other side because I'm typically the one bringing these to our dynamic and learning about them.
So ironic and because of your wing type there, being skeptical.
Wow. And so I'm an Enneagram 7 wing 6, and a phobic wing 6. And it was hard. I could see it like creating divisiveness internally for me. And so I just want to encourage people, do it together. What brought me to believing in the tool, and I know we're not fully going into it today, but you referenced the connectedness of our, what was the word you used? Core number? What was it?
Dominant type.
Dominant type. And I'm a dominant 7, with, disintegration and integration, stress, and in a positive way. And you wrote this here. I didn't read Michael's intro bio. I'll just call myself out. I didn't read it ahead of time, but when he said this, my notes down below back it up. He talked about when they are unhealthy and engaging in self-defeating behavior. The thing that made me believe in the tool was I began to observe in myself my incredibly self-critical self-talk, like the immensely critical self-talk that I would have that emitted into a disappointed dad face. Sorry, Mason Maddox. That's what Mason would always like. This is the feedback that he gave me as a leader is like, you don't get mad at me. You turn into this disappointed dad. You do this like hypercritical on the smallest of things, disappointed dad mode, which isn't normally my personality. I'm enthusiast in this. And so this was almost like a counter thing that didn't make sense to me. This doesn't line up with what I know as myself, even as an ENFP. And if I was just using that like surface level knowledge, the Enneagram, when it talked about the stressing and 7s going to 1, and I began to read the description of a stressed 1, I was like, somebody just read my mail. Yeah. Like it was, and I was like, okay, I now am going to give this a full dive in and study it. I'm going to now leverage my input strength. Hey, teasing ahead 1 week, and really begin to take it in because that was so illuminating for me because it explained for the first time why I behaved a certain way. And it became an indicator for me to know why I was stressed or when I was stressed. I should not why I was stressed, but when I was stressed. And I could be like, oh, wait a minute, I'm thinking this way again. That means I'm stressed. Wait a minute, what's driving that? And I could begin to go on a journey of trying to figure out what was the stimuli, what was the circumstances that caused me to be stressed. And so that was where the tool really became valuable for me on my journey. And that was just in the last, 5 years. I mean, it's recent for my professional life. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And that's what you just spoke to in our first episode. You talked about how the constant companion of awareness is a sense of inadequacy. I think out of all the tools we're talking about and my experience and what I observe in other people is when they start digging into Enneagram and reading about their type, especially where they go into stress, it makes people feel really uncomfortable because it's like, oh, they're like, this person is reading my mail and they are like, now they're like inside my motivation behind some of the things I do.
Yeah. And my not good mail.
Yeah. The not good mail. And I find that particularly helpful. It just has to be stewarded with a lot of intentionality when you bring it into work specifically.
And I think that can also explain what Aaron talked about, that there is a large knowledge base of the Enneagram at a thin level, an inch wide and a mile wide and an inch deep. I think that explains it is because it's different to want to go sit and go deep into that stuff. And so people will stay at the surface.
And one of the principles we teach for integrated businesses is to embrace pain. And
patience.
And patience. And in my view, you can't engage this tool to its fullest unless you are willing to embrace pain. And we would say that that's worth it. So Aaron, we bring this to our team at Restoration Group. One of your roles here is to lead our culture and team development. So you facilitate a lot of those trainings. And I mean, we've fully integrated this into our work culture for teammates. So from your point of view, what is the value that this can have for employees if a business is going to bring it into their culture?
I would say I believe any self-development that you're bringing into the workplace is worth it. But specifically with Enneagram, I don't know that it has as easy of an on-ramp, but I do still think that it's easier than others. Again, I mentioned in a previous episode, like LCP, or there's like EQI, things like that have like a tougher on-ramp. I would say Enneagram falls on the easier on-ramp end. So I think it's an easy way to get started with bringing self-development into your workplace. I do want to note too, and we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but there are downsides, of course. Like there are downsides where it can become divisive, like Clay pointed out. There are downsides, and this is with any personality profiling thing, where people can start to like profile other people for them, and that can cause a lot of tension. But those things aside, done, in a healthy way with accountability, things like that, I think Enneagram presents itself in a way that has a lot of really helpful verbiage. The way that things are described, I mean, you guys have both talked about, and I hear this a lot when people read about Enneagram. It's like, wow, they like really nailed like my motivation or my thought process, or like, oh my gosh, like that's something I've only thought in my brain, but now I'm reading it on this page. I feel like that's a very common descriptor when people are discovering Enneagram for the first time. And so I think it gives, even in the workplace, a lot of really great verbiage to use to be able to not just know yourself, but know your teammates better. And again, with the right work and right intentionality, can provide for some incredible things that just then become woven into your natural DNA. So I've given several examples on lots of podcast episodes about myself and my teammate, but I was even thinking about an interaction that I witnessed a while back that I think I even told a story of on an episode, but I thought about it through the lens of Enneagram, because I saw you, Clay, interact with a teammate who is an Enneagram 2 wing 3. And you didn't in that moment say, I'm addressing you this way because you're an Enneagram 2 wing 3, but you knew enough about her. And I believe a lot through the Enneagram, because at this point when this story had happened, we had done several team trainings on Enneagram. So she had very openly shared that this was her Enneagram type. And so I watched you, with that knowledge, interact with her in a way that we'll never know, but I would guess was informed by the fact that you knew a little bit more about this teammate, because you understood, okay, as a 2, her actually like pushing back on someone who was asking for help, because if you know about Enneagram, 2 is the helper. I'm married to 1, Michael's married to 1. So we know the 2s pretty well. And this teammate is a 2 and a self-proclaimed helper and is great at it. And someone was asking for her help and she pushed back on it to hold a boundary. And that's like, I mean, you win Enneagram as a 2 when you do that. Exactly, and that was a big deal. And you called attention to that. And even in just that quick moment, like that was such a great indicator of, man, this really has woven itself into our culture, where it doesn't mean that we're all as a team going on a week-long Enneagram retreat together. Like I can't quote to you every single person's wing and, what they integrate to and disintegrate to and subtypes. Like I don't know, but I know enough about our teammates at this point, and through some intentional, for sure. Like, I've done a lot of research and a lot of reading, and we've done a lot of group activities, but the reality is, like, we've been working on it as a group 1 hour a month for less than 6 months. And at this point, to see the level of knowledge that our team has of one another, and we talked about this in last episode, but self-awareness is so much less about looking at it and seeing where the gaps are and trying to fill the gaps and plug the holes, and so much more about, and so much greater use when we just are aware of what the actual scenario is, aware of the reality. And I think our team is so much more aware of the reality now that conversations like this, which include decision-making from leadership, which include interacting with a teammate in passing, which include, praising our employees, which include thinking through how to better our business practices, all through the lens of like, we know each other a little bit better because we've used Enneagram.
I also hope that for our team, when they're learning about this and how each of us are uniquely different, that it just generally extends to more empathy towards everyone.
Oh yeah.
Because you get that feeling of like, oh, it's like reading my mail. I'm uncomfortable. And then when you do it as a group, you start to realize, oh, Clay feels that way about himself and Erin feels that way about herself. And so we might respond to things differently, but now I understand why and just have more empathy for if you do something I don't understand that is out of my preference and maybe is frustrating. It's like, okay, well, let me be more curious about why she might be doing that. Maybe she's stressed about something, and and just having a lens of empathy, I think, can strengthen a workplace culture and team dynamic. So Clay, as a business owner, from that lens, what do you see as the value of bringing a tool like this into multiple businesses that you own?
Yeah, I think one of our primary roles, right, as a leader is to unlock those that we have the privilege of leading, those that choose to follow you. Like that is one of our roles and one of our primary roles. And I think this plays a piece in being able to do that well. So we've talked about it again in previous episodes, and we're referencing that a lot because there's a lot of good content tethered through this series. So I'd encourage you to go listen to the 2 episodes before this and come back next week. But that ability to be a student of those that you lead and not to fall in the trap of like, okay, Michael and Aaron are both 8s. So now I study an 8 and I now have the playbook about how to unlock you. No. You're both individuals. So we talk about personality profiles. Each of you has a different story. Each of you is very uniquely made in the image of God, but it can help as a leader to maybe understand certain behaviors or responses. Like when I give feedback a certain way and you respond one way and someone else responds another, I can then be like, okay, wait a minute. I got very different responses. Oh, I can tailor my feedback. I'm going to give you the same feedback, but I can tailor it or I can present it in a different way. Maybe one will be in a group setting. Maybe one I need to do one-on-one after. Either way, I think those type of elements, it can help equip you to learn them quicker, maybe do it with more empathy. But I think that's the main benefit I see to these tools. And again, as a leader, also, if you are the leader, you are the ceiling. So you are in the way. So if your team isn't performing at a level that you want it to, if the business isn't going where you want, this is even convicting to say in this moment, like I'm in the way. And so as a tool for myself, I got to keep going on my journey, because if I don't go on my journey, you're not going to go on yours. You're not going to go on yours. The team isn't going to go on theirs. And so that's the piece I can't own with myself. Yeah. Right. And so my job is to keep, again, I believe, with humility, become as aware as I can to stay in the generative tension. Yeah. That generative tension, because once you have awareness on something, you don't necessarily know what to do with it. That's the tension. And so then it's being willing to stay into that and go, hey, Mikey, I am seeing this in myself. Like, do you see that? How can I do that differently next time? Actually, Aaron, will you tell me the next time I'm doing that just to help me catch it maybe quicker?
I'm an 8. I definitely will.
Yeah, I'm not worried about that with you. I don't have to tee you up. But with that, I used the example of Mason earlier. I do have to articulate it to Mason because it's not natural for him as a 9 to just like throw that feedback straight to me in the moment you're
as
both laughing.
As a 1-wing 9.
Mason is a 1, guys. Mason, I am fighting for you.
This is a great internal joke running right now. He is a 1-wing 9. I know. And so that aspect that he is not going to just straight give me that feedback and to then really ask for it and give permission. Those pieces are, I think, essential to unlocking those. That's why I think it should be a part of it.
Yeah. And I want to just extrapolate on one thing you said, in that the leader is the ceiling. Yeah. And a phrase you said is that your team, like, I can't go on my journey if the ceiling is set. And I think that is true, except really talented people that are motivated are going to go on their journey. They're just going to go on it somewhere else. Yeah. They'll leave.
You bet.
If you're the ceiling and they're held back
and they're banging up against it,
they're just going to leave. And so you're going to lose talented people. And then you'll end up with an organization of folks under your ceiling that are content to be there, which is probably not what you want for a high performing business. Yeah. So that would just be my add on to, as a leader, you've got to set the tone. And if you want to keep growing as a business and keep being effective in the marketplace, keep elevating your own leadership. But so we think this is a valuable tool. We use it at our businesses. We also teach other businesses how to integrate it into their workplace culture. And there are some risks to bringing a tool like this to the workplace. So I want to just be transparent and open that is a reality, and that we should talk about that, be aware of it. So from both of your experiences, what are the risks of bringing a tool like this into the workplace?
I kind of alluded to this a minute ago, but just assuming that you know what someone else will do or think, etc. And it's funny, you and I just had to talk about this yesterday, where it's like, I think I know the two of you pretty well, that like, and that's kind of the purpose, is like knowing your team, but it is finding that great balance. And I'm not claiming that I always do, of like utilizing this in a way that like, I know you guys pretty well. So like I have a pretty general idea how you might react to something or what a decision might be. Or sometimes, Sarah might, if we're preparing for a meeting with you, like, hey, do you think Clay would want XYZ? And I think I have like a pretty good guess on that, an educated guess based off of knowing your personality profile. But there's a line to cross where you just assume that you know exactly. And that's kind of what we joked about, like putting someone in a box based off their type, or or even then you're making decisions, leadership decisions or hiring decisions or something based off of like, well, they're a 3, so, this, that. And I can think of several times in leadership meetings, and it's almost like funny to me now, but I think the way to combat that is there have been times where we're kind of all spinning on like, well, what do you like, how do you think this person's going to react to this? Like, or, what do you think they'll do or say or whatever? And we're kind of all spinning, well, I think this, well, no, they're definitely going to do that. Well, this or that. And then we kind of land in this, like, let's just ask them, like, let's just ask them what they think about it, or let's just bring them into this decision, or let's just actually get their input instead of spinning up and assuming what we think. And I think that's a danger that you can find, again, finding that line between utilizing it to know your people better, but not assuming that you know every single thing that they're going to think or do.
Yes. Specifically with the Enneagram, I would say it is an incredibly deep, complex tool. And so if you choose to bring it to the workplace, it needs patience. And it, you talked about it. We've only been doing it for 6 months with our team. And we were recently at a meeting talking about the rest of the year and what's left. And we recognized like, we're not even getting through all of it. And we were having a discussion of like, how do we keep going? What are we going to do? Because of the fact that it has such depth to it. And so I think if you're going to bring it, you got to be able to facilitate it for your team and then be patient with yourself too. Because there's the phrase about you got to learn something to live it, to loan it. You got to learn it to live it, to loan it. And so to be able to learn it takes time because it is an incredibly complex tool. So that's what I would say. That's the risk, is that, and that's probably why a lot of people don't, again, because it takes a lot of time and patience. Yes. That's good. Well, as we wrap up this episode, any final thoughts? I have one. Love to hear it. I haven't stopped thinking about the fact that I missaid Mason's number, which drives me insane. No, I'm being sincere because of the fact that I take great, I don't want to say pride. I try really hard to know my people. So Mason Allen, I apologize that I missed your number.
I'm just hearing that I have driven you insane every time that I got the inverse.
No, you can make that mistake. I haven't yet, but I just did now. So I apologize. My pit stains, and I haven't stopped thinking about it since. So my bad, dude. I know you. We cleared the air. Yep, we did. Any other final thoughts? Nope. That's what I got. Aaron?
Follow some Enneagram meme accounts. They're pretty entertaining. But don't only follow those. Follow some real ones too on social media. There's a lot of information out there. It's like good. Us. Follow us on this stuff. We are not an Enneagram account. I got you. Enneagram accounts. Yeah. But we do Enneagram training workshops for leaders and their teams. And that is something that we've done a few times and have some more coming up, and which you will hear more about, which you will see information about on our social media. So yeah, you will. Link in the description. I'd say it's worth it. Yeah, I believe so. I think it is a worthy tool to have in your workplace. Yep. Agreed. Yeah. Agreed. Well, this is episode 3 of a 4-part series. Next week, we will be talking about strength finders. So we'll wrap up the series with strength finders. And the verse I want to close out with is actually the same verse we used in episode 1. And I think that just with the complexity and nuance and all the things of the Enneagram, that it's really appropriate. And it's Genesis 1:27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female. He created them. Until next week, choose life. Thanks for tuning into our show. If you want to learn more about how you can integrate your faith into your business, download our integrated business guide for free by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.